What is up, you beautiful happy hustlers out there? Kerry Jack here, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Really, just soaking up this very moment right here and right now. And in this episode of the Happy Hustle Podcast, we have on Matthew Turner, who is a British author who wrote his latest book, Beyond the Pale, on the back of interviewing hundreds of successful entrepreneurs, authors, investors, and thought leaders. As well as writing his own books, Matthew ghostwrites both articles and books for other successful entrepreneurs and thought leaders in between spending time with his two children. And he wrote a pretty cool book called Beyond the Pale that is all about escaping the hustle and finding yourself. And he talks about the anti-hustle in this episode and how to have whole life balance. And I figured it'd be a great fit for the happy hustlers out there who I know are interested in that work-life balance and getting away from the hustle and grind mentality. So here comes a very entertaining chat with Mr. Matthew Turner right after this quick sponsor break. Real quick, guys, I just want to give a huge shout out to this episode's sponsor, Nootopia, who's making the world domination box for maximum daily performance. These are nootropics, aka brain supplements that I take on the regular to optimize my cognitive performance. And I'll tell you what, these things really work. And what's best about the actual Nootopia whole mindset is they come with a 365-day money back guarantee, which means they actually stand behind their product. And I love that about them. And you guys get the hookup if you go to nootopia.com/happy hustle. And there you could see all about the different supplements. There's actually 9 innovative formulas that they offer as a part of the world domination box. And you pick which one is right for your day. If you have a podcast interview, okay, try this one. If you're writing a book, try this one. If you're going out on the town and you want a little pickup with the enhance your emotional intelligence, you try this formula. And you can kind of pick and choose which ones work best for you. And they also custom create the formulas. You guys are going to love it. Check it out at nootopia.com/happy hustle to get the hookup. Now, let's dive in back to this episode. All right, Matthew Turner, welcome to the Happy Hustle Podcast, my man. I am super excited to connect.
Man, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited. I know we've had this conversation a little while ago, so it's great to finally be able to do this and to talk to you and about the book and everything else.
Yeah, man, this is going to be a fun one. I mean, you're a British author and you have a really cool new book called Beyond the Pale, which is all about escaping the hustle and finding whole life balance. And it's a fable, really, that I found interesting to my, methodology. The Happy Hustle is all about these things that you write about in your book, escaping the hustle, finding happiness, being fulfilled. It's not all about the profit and success. And I wanted to dive into your, mindset around the book and your anti-hustle methodology. But before we do, what's something interesting about yourself that not too many people know, Matthew?
Well, yeah, you asked me this and I was thinking about it, and it's not that too many people don't know, plenty of people do, but it's not something I talk a great deal about on social media because everyone knows me as being a British author, as you can say. Hear my voice, you can probably get that. But I actually worked 7 summers right on the boundary between Kentucky and Ohio, at a place called Camp Ernst. So I've always had this spiritual affinity, if you will, with America and Americans, especially in the Midwest, because very much that camp is like my spiritual home. It's a place I often think about, especially if I'm having a bit of a down day. So I'm very much British, but I'm not American, but I've got a little bit of Americana in me, especially when it comes to the Buckeye State and the very cusp and top end of Kentucky, which...
What'd you do at the camp?
So I was like a counselor.
Oh, cool.
I mainly worked with the teenagers, the older bunch. I had several roles over the years, but yeah, usually with sort of 12 to sort of 16-year-olds, basically babysitting, trying to keep teenagers to not do teenage things. So yeah, lots of fun, but it was a great outdoor camp, like rock climbing areas and like ropes courses and loads of areas to hike and beautiful lake and yeah, just a
Super
beautiful
cool.
part of the world. So yeah.
Huh. Very, very cool, man. I like that. Well, awesome, man. Well, let's dive in. I like to kick things off with a bang. So just give us your backstory in regards to what made you want to write this book, Beyond the Pale, and kind of where'd you even get the idea for it?
So we have to zoom back a few years to when I was writing my previous book called The Successful Mistake, which was a nonfiction book. I interviewed like 160 odd entrepreneurs about failure and about the
Mm,
big mistake that they'd made and how they turned it into success. And I wrote that and started recording all these interviews basically to just help me learn how to be, you know, an entrepreneur, to work for myself, because I had no idea what I was doing. So I just saw these as like great little coaching sessions. And I was very excited to see how people overcome adversity,
mm,
basically. As you can imagine, speaking to all those people, I learned a ton. And I had a
hmm.
fantastic experience writing The Success Mistake. And one of the big key takeaways I took from writing that book was something that separates successful people, like really successful people, not just people who seem successful, but like live successfully, to
Mm,
everyone else, is that successful people have defined what success means to them.
mm,
And I realized that I've always kind of followed a version of success, which doesn't necessarily mean anything to me. It's just you grow up assuming success is certain things based on the media, society, education, your own parents, and whatnot. So I started to realize that to be successful, you need to define what success means. And this just sent me on a personal development journey, just going down that rabbit hole of like beliefs and habit formation and mindset and our relationship with between mind, body, and spirit, and all these various things. And I just kind of kept stripping away the layers like an onion. And eventually it brought me to this, I suppose, this outlook on the hustle and my relationship with it, my relationship with my work and my personal health and well-being, my relationships. And I just came up over the course of a few weeks this idea of what if I write a fable where I combine my passion of both writing nonfiction like The Success Mistake and fiction like the previous novels I've written together, very much like The Alchemist, because I'd read The Alchemist a couple of years beforehand and it was a book that just stuck with me. And I loved
hmm.
how it taught without teaching. It was
Yep.
just threaded throughout there and it just got you thinking about things and relating what was talked about in the book to your life. And I was like, I want to write that kind of book. And I think it'd be really interesting to focus on today's like culture toward hustle and our relationship with it. And shortly after, I learned I was going to become a father for the second time. So Imogen is now 3.5. So her life and the birth of this book very much entwined. It's crazy to think how the last few years have just kind of taken a crazy journey. But once I learned about Imogen, I realized I was going to have to like buckle down. I was going to have to half my workload so I could be a better, more present father, but also consistently at least double my income. And it felt impossible. So again, that sort sent me down a different rabbit hole of really focusing and like, what do I bring to the table? What do I need to say yes? Like, what does a hell yes look like for me? And again, this process, which took probably 2 or 3 months, around about 4 years ago now, where I did half my workload and more than double my income, taught me a great deal about my relationship with the hustle. So just the general journey of The Success Mistake and then everything that came after, and then learning about Imogen together, it just created this book in the head. And I was
Mm.
lucky enough to get some notes down, post-it cards, structure it, and a few years later, boom, book.
Very cool, man. I want to unpack something that you said that really resonates, and it is define what success looks like for you. And all the happy hustlers out there listening you need to define what it looks like for you. And here's just a little backstory with me, and you know, many of the happy hustlers know my story, but I didn't define what success looked like for me. And I thought with one of my former businesses, being a tech entrepreneur and a big startup founder and wearing the fancy suit in New York City and getting the 7-figure VC funding deal and, you know, inking massive partnerships with Microsoft and IBM, and then doing like this whole 5-year exit plan and becoming like just stupid rich was the dream. And then
Yeah.
I got profit and success from this startup and made this huge um this huge like company trajectory work, and I burnt out. And
Yeah.
I realized that wasn't what I wanted. So I redefined success for me. And success for me is strictly lifestyle entrepreneurship, having time, creative, and financial freedom. Those three freedoms, and it's like this weekend, I'm going horseback riding for 3 days, 15 miles a day, camping out underneath the stars in Montana, fly fishing on the Clark's Fork River in between. And I'm going to take business calls from that Monday because it's Labor Day at the time it's recorded. And I'm like, that's success for me. I can work where I
Yeah.
want, when I want. I could be wearing my cowboy hat, in underneath the stars, and making money and making an impact. And I just think it's an important point to just distill, like, you have to define what success looks like for you. And I think people, they throw out, oh, when I make $1 million, I'll be successful. It's like it's a number that seems
Yeah.
just, people throw out, and they think that defines success, the money or the materialistic. Oh, I'll buy a Ferrari. That's success. It's like, you have to define what it looks like for you. Oftentimes it's not the materialistic thing, and it's not the money that really dictates success and happiness. So I just love that you talked about that. And just for clarity, your daughter's name is Imogen. Is that right?
Imogen. Yeah.
Imogen. That's a cool name, man. I never heard that
Yeah.
name.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So, okay. So talk to us a little bit about the actual, lessons that you are sharing in Beyond the Pale, and specifically the anti-hustle.
Well, it's interesting you talked about your own journey there, because it very much aligns with Ferdinand, who's the lead character in Beyond the Pale. He is like the poster boy child in this fictional world of what success looks like. Silicon Valley entrepreneur, tech startup that's developed and has just got a lot of funding. He's on the fast track of becoming like Silicon Valley's next big billionaire. And I wanted to write it like that, where it just seemed totally unattainable for most people, and just the kind of person that we aspire towards. The kind of person who would have 10 million Instagram followers, not because he shares anything of value, just because people think they want what he has. Like, he seems to have it all. He seems to have it figured out. And he's there walking through his everyday, assuming he's got it all figured out too, because he's successful, he's rich. He's got a company that's just going up, up, up. He's going to be a billionaire. He's got everything. And then he goes on his podcast where he speaks to Jordan Harbinger. So I interviewed like 10 people who have personally inspired me on my journey over the years. So it's a fictional character, but set very much in the real world. So he goes on Jordan's podcast and just gets eaten alive, basically, because Jordan just keeps asking these questions of like, yeah, but why? Why do you want $1 billion? Like, why do you want to become a billionaire? Why do you want all these things? And he kind of realizes and have an epiphany of, I don't really know, which is everything we've just talked about. He realized that he hadn't defined what success meant to him, or he had done several years before. He had this vision for the company, but he just allowed life to get into the way of it all. And he just started going through the motions and just doing what he felt he had to do. He was wearing all these different masks. So he's kind of has this awakening. He feels totally and utterly crippled because he feels he should feel successful, but he realizes he doesn't. And he realizes he hasn't for some time. He's been burning out. He's been unhappy. He's been distracting himself with partying and this, that, and the other. So he has to go on this journey where he just travels the world, meets all these individuals, and starts peeling away that layer of like, one layer after another. Like, what does success mean? And like, what does trust mean? What's our relationship with mind, body, and spirit? Like, what is our relationship with mindset? And all these different elements that don't necessarily teach him anything, but they continuously give him these little nuggets of inspiration where he starts asking the right questions. And for me, that is probably the biggest takeaway purpose and mission of the book. It's not to provide any solution. It's not to provide an answer per se, like so many books do these days, because that's what we go into. We hope that the next book we read is going to give us the answer. But the problem with that is we're not asking the right questions. We're just throwing bland broad questions out there in the hope that someone or something will give us the answer, or somehow we will stumble across the right answer. So what Ferdinand discovers towards the back end of the book is that he's been asking the wrong questions. But then he starts to realize what the right questions are, which then allows him to, figure out what he needs to do next. And that's what I hope it teaches everybody else. It gets you to, first of all, relate yourself to Ferdinand. It doesn't matter whether you are on the fast track to $1 billion, $1 million, your first $1,000. It's just getting you to question your relationship with success, your dream, your vision, what your relationship with work and life and your own personal well-being and your big sort of important relationships are, and whether you're okay with that. And then secondly, it's to just get you to step back and realize that you're not going to find the answer if you continue to just throw out broad questions. You've first got to work on you. Take a step back, fill your own cup, this whole idea of what we touched upon at the beginning, like whole life balance. So then you're giving yourself the time and the freedom to start asking the right questions. And once you ask the right questions, you can go on to a journey that will give you the right answers. But all the while you're asking these broad questions, you're very unlikely to find the right answer. Maybe you will. You might strike lucky, and win the lottery, but most people don't. And I think this is what leads to a lot of midlife crises and a lot of people who get to 50 or 60 or 70 and just go like, what the hell have I been doing my whole life? So not a book with answers per se, but a book which will hopefully get you to start asking the right questions, and a book that won't glorify the journey of that super successful entrepreneur, but instead just get you to relate your relationship with life as a whole and your role within it.
Yeah, love that. Now, I got to ask, what are those right questions that Ferdinand comes to? Give us three questions that we can all ask ourselves as happy hustlers out there, searching for more meaning, searching for more fulfillment. What are those specific questions?
Well, to be honest, we've touched on a couple of them already. Like one of the big ones is like, what does success mean to me? And you can replace success with meaning, with vision, with purpose. It's just a word. But we're all striving towards something, especially if you're listening to a podcast like this. If you're listening to a podcast like this, you'll probably have some kind of ambition. You probably have some kind of dream, whether it's setting up a business, whether it's climbing the ladder, whether it's trying to have better relationships at home, whatever it may be. You obviously have something that you're striding towards. And chances are you aren't very clear on what the real answer to that is. You're just following a version of success, a version of meaning, a version of purpose based on what you've always known, based on what society's given you, the media, the constant comparison culture that is social media and the online world. So that's a big one for you to be like, okay, what does this mean to me? Because then once you know that, you can realize when you get there. Yeah. You can realize that, okay, maybe I'm closer to success than I thought I was. Because it's not that I need $1 million. Actually, I just want time. I want enough money so I don't have to worry about paying the bills. You don't need $1 million for that. Most people just need, I don't know, maybe 60K a year might be enough for that.
Yeah, true.
Maybe 100K. So it gives you a bit of reality. It's like, actually, once I define what success is for me, maybe I'm closer to it than I thought. But maybe you realize that you're going in a completely wrong direction. Because let's face it, if you're trying to climb the corporate ladder and success is time with your family, you may never reach it. Yep. You might be heading in the complete wrong direction. So a real big question I think people need to be asking, rather than just, I'm pursuing success, is like, what does success mean to me? Another really important question is, what is my relationship with the hustle? And when I talk about the hustle, I don't mean about the 70-hour work weeks and the Gary Vee type mentality. The hustle for me, like, that's included in the hustle. It's a toxic part of the hustle. But the hustle is much grander than that. The hustle is basically just life, right? And I think it's always been there. But the problem is, like, today, that we've got a bit of a disadvantage compared to like our parents and our grandparents, because they didn't see as many people. They weren't able to compare themselves to as many people. They were able to compare themselves to the few people they saw on TV and in newspapers and in magazines. Not that much compared to today, right? Yeah. They also were able to compare themselves to other people in their office or their social circles. Again, not that many people. Today, you can pick up your phone and within 2 minutes, get a little peek into 2, maybe even 3 dozen people's lives.
Yep.
And constantly you're going to be comparing yourself. That person looks happier than me. That person has more money than me. That person has a better car than me. That person has this. That person has that. So you're constantly comparing yourself.
Yep.
Constantly comparing yourself. And we often do this when we're feeling a little bit down, when we're feeling a little bit lost, when we're feeling a bit bored. So we do all this and it feeds more negativity into it. So what do? I don't know what the answer is. So I'm just going to work harder. I'm just going to try and follow that formula. Everyone's on TikTok right now, so I'll get on TikTok. Everyone's doing this right now,
Not
so
me.
I'll do that. Well, not me either, to be honest.
No, I know.
But you know, it's like
I hear you.
so you just kind of going through these boundaries again, throwing broad questions out there, hoping you'll get a specific answer, hoping you'll feel enlightened and get it, you know, and figure it all out. So that's a big thing. Like, what is my relationship with a hustle? And most people are wasting time. And I include myself in that because we're constantly connected. We're constantly on, consciously or subconsciously comparing ourselves to other people, comparing our success versus somebody else's, comparing our journey to somebody else's. And then we just try to alleviate that by working harder a bit longer, checking this email, doing that. I mean, for most people, and I imagine you find it easier than most because you sound like you're very much at one with nature and you like to get out there, but most people struggle just being on their own. Most people struggle to just sit in a room and just allow the sound of silence to take over. The temptation to check your phone, to read a book, to put on the TV, to have a little internal conversation with yourself is constantly there. And I think it's always been there, but it's more rampant now because we're just never silent. We're not comfortable with nothingness. But it's nothingness that allows you to actually allow that inner voice to come out. It's nothingness that allows you to just sit on your thoughts and your feelings. It's nothingness that allows you to start figuring out those right questions.
Yeah.
So again, a big question I think we all like, what is my relationship with the hustle? What is my relationship with work-life balance? What is my relationship with life as a whole?
Yeah.
And then a big question for Ferdinand that he specifically asked in the book was he started to realize, not necessarily, he figured that he had this choice, like he was either going to have to leave his business that he'd built and start something new, or he was just going to have to go back to how things were. But towards the end of the book, he starts realizing that he did have a vision for the business when he started it in college, that there was a purpose, that there was a reason. So he started reconnecting to what that was. So a big question for Ferdinand was, who did I used to be? And back then, when I was this person, who did that person want to become? A lot of the things, and it was great. It's quite early in the book, I think like the 5th or 6th chapter, Ferdinand speaks to AJ Leon, someone who's personally had a fantastic role on my journey over the years. And when I spoke to AJ about it, he told me about his journey. He kind of was the corporate finance guy in Manhattan, corner office and everything. And he escaped it and is now just like this complete nomad misfit, just lives a crazy life. But a lot of people figured that in order for him to leave that, he had to become someone new. But what AJ did was he actually just rediscovered who he was. He was a dreamer of a teenager. You know, he was a bit of a rebel. He was a bit of a misfit back then. He had these crazy dreams and aspirations. But he became, you know, that corporate finance guy because he figured that was his way to be successful. So it's not always about becoming someone new. It's about rediscovering who you were.
Yeah.
Go back to who that person was when you were that just reckless, rebellious teenager who had all these goals, all these aspirations, felt like he or she could just achieve anything. So go back to who that person was. Who did they want to become? Do you still want to become that person? And again, the answer for a lot of people is, hell yeah. Hell yeah, I want to be more like that person. So those are 3 right there.
Yeah, I love it, man. Those are great questions. I mean, the last one hits home a bit too, just because, you know, when you think about who you once were, like your true childhood self and the wonder around, you know, the carefree lifestyle, the freedom, the aspirations, the dreams. And then somewhere along the path, we get caught up with society's implications and this direction from our counselors or our coaches or our parents or our teachers or whatever, right? And then we think we have to fit the third definition of success. It's really an eye-opening journey to follow that path and then realize that's not what success is for you, and then rediscover it for what it really is for yourself. In your childhood wonder state, what do you actually want? So I ask all the happy hustlers out there, what is that childhood wonder, those dreams, those aspirations, your true self, your true soul crying for? And how can you get there? How can you become happier within the hustle, and have that whole life balance? And for me, my book's coming out soon called The Happy Hustle, and I do offer actual answers and solutions. Not saying it's necessarily the only answer, but I do know it has helped me find work-life balance, and it is the 10 alignments of being a happy hustler. So I basically broke my life down into 10 different areas. I call them alignments, and I measure where I'm at in each of those 10 different areas every Sunday.
Nice.
One is like it becomes the soul mapping acronym, but selfless service is the first one. Did I volunteer this week? Yes or no? Okay. If I did to a sufficient amount, there'd be a 5. If I didn't, it'd be a 1. Optimize health is the O. Did I work out and eat healthy? Okay. If it's a 5, great. I don't need to prioritize change. If it's a 1, I need to prioritize change. The U is unplug digitally. Did I disconnect from technology? Did I be present in the moment, be still in the silence? And then L is loving relationships. Did I have love in my week? Did I connect with my partner or my family or my friends? And I'll spare you guys the details. The happy hustlers know the mapping part, and they can always listen to the other episodes where I get into it. But that framework is what I write about in my book, and it's really important to have the balance. For me, balance equals happiness. I'm going to put it on my damn tombstone. Actually, I'll probably get burnt up to Chris, and I don't want a tombstone. I don't want to be buried. But the point is, I believe in it that strongly, and I really truthfully believe it. And I'm curious, what is your work-life balance look like, and what's your definition of it?
Yeah, well, I've realized that the whole pursuit of work-life balance can be quite toxic, and because it forces you to put on these different hats or masks, if you will. And that's kind of been my thing. And that's why I talk about whole life balance. Because I'm like you, I think balance is so key, but it's malleable, it's not set in stone. Like you go through different chapters in life, what balance looks like what whole life balance looks like when you're 22 and single is going to look very different when you're 33 and maybe have 3 or 4 children.
Yeah.
So whole life balance is malleable, it's changing, and it's always important to set boundaries within your life.
Yep.
So there's going to be certain elements and aspects that form part of your life. So family might be one, like your own personal health might be one, work might be one, but different elements of work, like client work versus personal work. So your life is always going to be filled with these different segments. And it's important to set boundaries between, so you can be at one and commit yourself to work when you need to commit to work, to commit yourself to you when you commit to you. But to not set these hardened boundaries, a bit like you said earlier, you are going away out into the outback, but still going to be able to take calls. For me, that is the definition of whole life balance. It's not trying to say, I'm going to work hard Monday to Friday so I can be a good father Saturday and Sunday. For me, that is what work-life balance promotes. Whole life balance allows you to figure out what works for you. So you can be a good father and a good worker simultaneously. So you can be, just you. And I just liken it again, bringing it back to these ideas of wearing these different masks. Too often we get caught up feeling like we have to be a certain person in a certain situation. So I have to wear this yellow mask when I go to work. because I'm a leader, because I'm a boss, because I'm this, because I'm that. Then I have to wear this blue mask when I'm at home around my kids because I'm a father and I've got to be responsible and such and such. Then I'll wear this orange mask around this certain social group because they've known me since I was a kid. So they know who I used to be when I was fun and active and easygoing. But then I have to wear this purple mask against, this new group of friends, which have only known me sort of post-college, where I'm a bit more serious, where I'm a bit more that. So work-life balance, in my opinion, just forces you to wear these different masks. You're constantly feeling like you have to be a certain person in a certain situation, a certain person around other certain people. What it does is it prevents you from just being you. In fact, it can become so toxic, and I feel this sometimes, that you don't even know who you are anymore.
Yeah.
Kind of touched upon what we talked about earlier, like reconnecting with who you were before all this bullshit responsibility just started to take over.
Yeah.
You become so inundated on who you feel you need to be that you forget who you actually are. You don't feel comfortable being who you are. Whole life balance kind of knocks all that to one side and says, figure out who you are. Figure out who you are so you can be you in every situation. So you can turn up to you at work. So you can turn up as you around your kids. So you can turn up around you as around all your friends in the same way. Within all this, you have to set these boundaries. So if I'm around my kids, I want to be around my kids. So there's certain things you can do. I'm going to leave the phone in the drawer. I'm going to, block email. We're going to go somewhere and get outdoors so we're disconnected. So you can set these different boundaries for different times. But you can also say, I'm not going to be someone who's afraid of taking a work call around my kids. I'm not going to be afraid of involving my kids in my work or, helping my work help me better lead my kids. If that is going to allow me to be a better person, if that's going to allow me to grow as a whole. So whole life balance is just figuring out like who you are, bringing you to the table as often as you can, just saying no to all these different masks and hats that we have to wear. Set boundaries within all this, but appreciate that these boundaries are malleable, that they're not hardened in stone things that never change, because they change.
Yeah.
Like throughout the year, the boundaries are going to look different in August, for instance, when the kids are at home or school, compared to April when they're in school. They're going to look a little bit different when you've got this massive book launch coming up.
Yep.
And you've got to do a few more late calls and things like we're doing right now, compared to when you're just planning the next book, where you're not going to just have as much time and you're just going to dip in and out of it for 20 minutes here and there each day. It's going to look different when, you've got this massive tax bill, maybe you've got to pay, and you've got to buckle down and just be, an unhappy hustler for a couple of weeks to get it paid.
Yeah.
And then when it's paid, you can just go back to doing it. So understanding about the boundaries you set aren't set in stone, that they are malleable, and that there's no real need for you to wear these different masks around different people in different situations. Just to allow yourself to be you, to tap into you. And the more you do that, the easier you'll find it to be you in all situations. And I honestly believe the easier you'll find it to just be happy and content and more present and less stressed. Because I think it leads to so much negative mental health, and where so many people suffering. Again, I put myself in this bracket too. This constant worry of like subconsciously just, who am I supposed to be right now? Am I living up to these expectations? Am I setting the right example? Am I following the right path? And you just become so inundated in it all. You just lose sight of who you are. And you've got these inner voices screaming to break through, but you give it no time to have a voice. So I think that's my kind of definition of whole life balance, and where it just differs a little bit from work-life balance. So
for sure. I agree with the whole life balance. And I think being unapologetically yourself is the best way to be. Having all those different masks on and having to be different things to different people, it's exhausting. And what I say truthfully is, work-life balance isn't a destination. It is an ever never ending journey. It's really not finite. It's not a thing that you just say, oh, I got work-life balance, I'm good. It's not that.
Absolutely. I liken it to I liken it to like the old school's scales,
Yeah.
where it's not a digital one, like you got to see
Yeah.
it for yourself.
Yep.
And you'll put one thing on one end, right? And then it'll just tip it a bit too far. So you got to find this other little object around your house to put it on to balance it up. And it
Yeah.
and it seems to be balanced for just like a few seconds.
And then the
Then
wind.
some bit of wind will shift something. So you've got to do it. So it's constantly changing.
Yes.
It's not like you've got all of these formulas and you've got, the numbers in front of you, and you
Yeah.
know that this little object weighs 1 kilogram and this one weighs 2 kilograms, so you can measure it out. No, it's just everyday items around you, and it's up to you to just keep adding little balances. And when it just tilts over a little bit, you've got to find something else to put on it. It's always changing. It's not finite and set in stone, like you say. It's very
Yep.
malleable,
Yep.
and yeah, it's free flowing, evolving.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. And I know people are probably listening to this going, all right, where can we get this awesome book, Beyond the Pale? So, Matthew, tell us, where people can go to get this book.
Well, first of all, keep an eye out if you're watching for this cover. You can get it on Amazon and hopefully in your local bookstore. But the easiest place for you to go and check it out is to go to beyondbook.co. That gives you access to a free sample, so you can read the first few chapters. It links to where you can buy the book, as well as like my Facebook profile, Instagram, and how to connect, as well as just some
Awesome.
more information about the book. So yeah, beyondbook.co.
Beyondbook.co. Now, Matthew, I do like to ask all my guests a couple questions in a couple different disciplines, and I like to deem them happy hustle hacks, like a tip, tool, or tactic in each. Let's first talk about health. Health is imperative. If you are going to be a happy hustler and have whole life balance, you got to have health. What is a happy hustle hack that you use for your health?
Walking. Yeah. Walking with no intention behind it other than to just walk, and if in nature, that's obviously better, but even if it's just walking around your local town and just giving yourself some time to just disconnect from your work.
Yep.
The longer the better, but even if it's just 10 minutes, to just get out there, be outside, people watch if you want. Everyone's a bit different, listen to music, no music, but just allow your mind to just breathe a
Yep.
little bit. It's amazing how many little epiphanies you'll have when you just allow yourself to walk with no reason or purpose behind it.
Love that. Now let's talk about money. I mean, it's again important to have it. I see it as a frequency, a tool, something that really shows more of the world, more of who you are. It is to me, just that. And I'm curious what your take is on money, and if you have a happy hustle hack on maybe how to make more or spend wisely or invest smarter, something around money.
Best thing I ever did in terms of making more money was to focus on less so I could focus more. So basically learn to say no, figure out what it is that you bring to the table that is going to genuinely help other people. So for me, it's usually surrounds writing. So as well as writing my own books, I write for clients. I was someone pre-Imogen who just kept saying yes to all these different things, trying to figure out what I brought to the table. Imogen coming on the scene forced me to have some harsh conversations with myself and go, what is it that you do better than most other people, Matthew? And I realized it was writing. That forced me to go out there, find the right clients. And then the second part to this is to charge more than you think you're worth. The more, the better. Because those are the best clients. The clients that say, yeah, you're worth X amount. You might only think you're worth, you might go and go, oh, if I offer this at $500, like it's still more than I'm worth. Do it at 700 or 800 or 1,000. Because there are people out there who will look at it and won't be put off by 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000. That forces you to step up and to go deep into your profession. So if you are saying like, I'm a writer, that's what I'm going to bring to the table, charge more than what you think you're worth, because there'll be people out there who go, yeah, sure. And that forces you to step up and to continue to step up. So constantly push yourself, charge more than you think you're worth, and you will
Love
make
that.
more.
Yeah, love that. Charge more than you think you're worth. And yeah, that's just a great reminder for all the happy hustlers and myself out there, just to keep, make sure you deliver the value but
Yeah. You got
obviously,
to step up then.
yeah, but it
Definitely.
pushes
Yeah.
you to
Pushes
do
you. Yeah.
just that. Exactly. What about spirituality? Do you have a happy hustle hack in regards to spirituality?
I am. It's something I'm just starting to get back into again after falling off the wayside for far too long. It's journaling.
Hmm.
Sometimes I struggle with it because as a writer, I do a lot of writing. So
Yeah.
sometimes just falling into writing and reading when my mental health isn't quite there, it's like a busman's holiday is the same we have here in the UK. But journaling is powerful. And again, journaling with no real purpose. I love like your sort of weekly sort of journaling prompts, like have I done this, have I done that? That's kind of like a proactive, purposeful piece of journaling. And I think that's really helpful in terms of accountability and reflection. But sometimes just giving yourself the time to just journal freehand with
Yep.
no purpose behind it, just to get what's in your head onto the paper, onto your phone, or onto the laptop. It can just free you. It can give you ideas. It can help you solve problems. But again, it's just a way to allow that little inner voice that's screaming to get out, usually in written
Yep.
form. So journaling, again, like walking with no intention or purpose.
Love it. Yeah, I thought of the artist way when you were talking about that. I don't know if you've ever practiced the artist way, but
I've not,
freehand
no.
journaling, it's really powerful to just get out what you're holding in. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a powerful tool. Now, Matthew, I do like to wrap up every interview with the rapid fire round, where this is basically just where I
Nice.
ask you random questions and you answer honestly first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. Favorite food? Go.
Oh, pad thai.
You said pad thai?
Pad thai.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Favorite
Yeah.
movie?
Ooh, Garden State.
Favorite book?
Ooh, Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Never watched it or never heard that. Um, Best business advice?
Say no.
Mm. What's your spirit animal?
Owl, I believe. I did the personality test. Now I'm an owl.
Nice. Um, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Ooh, flying. I think. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Especially if I
What
could go
would?
up into space.
Yeah, for sure. What was your first hustle? First thing you did for money?
Beyond a job, I did like a music night, like DJ type thing.
Nice. Um, if you had a billboard for the world to see, and this was your last piece of content, what would that billboard read?
Fuck a hustle.
Fuck the hustle. Nice. And three things you're most grateful for.
My son George, my daughter Imogen, and my health, especially after this last year where there's been a lot of lack of health. Just having it is a great thing.
Amen to that, brother. You crushed that rapid fire round. Matthew, I just want to take a moment, man, and acknowledge you. I appreciate you sharing your love, your light, your wisdom with the Happy Hustlers. This has been awesome, man. And I know we got a bunch of happy hustlers out there, who are seeking that whole life balance. And, beyondbook.co is a great place to pick up this book, Beyond the Pale, and, dive deeper into those important questions to ask yourself. And I just appreciate you, bringing this to light and echoing this message that I'm so passionate about, in your own unique way, obviously. But yeah, thank you again, man.
Thank you for having me. I feel we're two peas in the same pods, and yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, man. And, for those of you guys just listening, you got to watch the YouTube video because we have very similar hairstyles too. Although you do
We
yours
do.
much, much nicer than mine. He's got a nice bun and mine's just free flowing like a caveman. But yeah, man, this has been great. Final question, Matthew. What does happy hustling mean to you?
Similar to you, really, having the time to take my time.
Mic drop. Love it. Matthew Turner, everyone. Thanks for watching and listening. We out. Peace and love. Thanks so much for watching and listening to this episode of the Happy Hustle Podcast, guys. I so appreciate you. And I just want to let you know that we are doing something very special for all the Happy Hustlers for my upcoming book launch, The Happy Hustle. I'm not going to give you too many details now, but I will say it's going to be awesome. So be on the lookout. And if you want to be the first to know about it in this really cool phase of my journey, which is the book launch journey, you can go to thehappyhustle.com and then you just get on the email list by entering your email for the ebook. And you get a copy of the ebook. And then when the real book comes out, you'll be the first to know about all these awesome details. All right, now take care. Peace and love.